This meeting is being recorded.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to Zoom In on a Fresh Conversation. And as they heard twice, this meeting is being recorded. So welcome to Zoom In on a Fresh Conversation. My name is Donna Gray Banks. I am your host for this evening, and our special guest is Mr. Thomas R. James, author of If the Walls Could Talk, Would You Listen? Thank you, Thomas, aka James, for being on the show this evening.
Thank you for having me.
Zoom In on a Fresh Conversation is sponsored by Eyeless Diamonds, LLC, brought to you by Milton McCulloch, author of Love and Emancipation, L.D. Robinson, owner and operator of Ladero Press, and Angie B. and Barty Productions. Please join me at the Museum of the Arts in DeLand, Florida, as we present the fourth artist in their Black Art Talk series. Now, let me just tell you how pivotal this is. This Black Artist Talk series has never been done in the land. So this is historic. We are on our fourth artist. We are going to extend it into 2023. So please, everybody, come join us. It is Friday, June 17th at 5 p.m. And we will be featuring the artist Everett Sproul. If you have not seen any of his work, please reach out to him on Facebook, Everett Sproul. He is a phenomenal artist. If you have any questions for Jay, please leave them in the chat box. And again, this conversation is being recorded. Good evening, Jay. Please take a moment and give our audience a brief background.
My name is Thomas Renard James, but I'm better known as Jay. In 1990, I was born and raised in Miami, Florida. I was raised by both of my parents. I lost my father in 1986. My mother, thank God, she's still with me.
Yay!
Yeah, fast forward, 1990, I was charged with first-degree murder, armed robbery, armed burglary, aggravated assault. I was found guilty, sent to prison for life, and I fought. I maintained my innocence throughout my incarceration. From day one, I was screaming I was innocent. However, it took 32 years for everybody to understand that I was in fact innocent. On April the 27th, 2022, I was exonerated and ruled and found actually innocent in the court of law. And here I am.
32 years.
Yes, ma'am.
I can't even imagine. I just can't imagine. So in your book, you talk about the state of Florida incarcerates an incredible amount of people. In current statistics, it is ranked 14th. Was that the number? Is that the number that was in the 70s and 80s, or was it worse when you were convicted?
No, I don't know the exact where it was actually ranked at that time, but I know it was nowhere near that that number. In fact, the incarceration rate since 1970 has actually tripled per capita, with people being incarcerated in the state of Florida. In fact, Florida lock up more of its citizens than any other state or country, for that matter.
Yeah, the slogan is "Come on vacation, go home on probation."
Yeah,
that's crazy.
You come to Florida on vacation, you leave on probation, you get brought back to Florida on violation.
Right, that's crazy. How is it that you can celebrate being from a state that has that kind of slogan? But anyway, let's talk about how difficult it is to advocate for yourself once you're placed. Behind bars is just so terrible. So for just so our souls are complete, we're going to call it a gated community, because behind bars is just, and that's what it is, I know, but how hard is it?
Yeah, it's extremely difficult, and it is, and you aptly named it a gated community because it's a society within a society.
It is,
Um,
absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely.
But what happens is when once you incarcerated, you've been convicted, but even sometimes even just the fact that you was charged, it's like the heart the heart of society turns cold against you.
Throws you away.
Um, yeah. Um, the deck is automatically stacked against you at that point. Nobody seems to want to give way to reason. It's like, and I'm gonna use my situation as an example. I was found guilty based on solely on what one person said, even though they had at least eight, at least 8 or 9 other people saying something different. However, those other people, at least 5 of those other people never testified. So the jury never heard from them. But when I went to trial, 3 people got on the stand. And out of them 3 people, only one person said that I was the person that done it. You take that in conjunction with the fact that they had 9 sets of fingerprints. This happened, it was more like a home invasion type of robbery. So it was inside of someone's residence. They had fingerprints that didn't belong to anybody in the residence, but they didn't belong to me either. And the jury was made aware of this. The state was aware of it, obviously. The police was aware of it, obviously. I still was charged. I still was tried. I still was convicted. They even gave the suspected person, they gave their names. They actually gave the name. That's how I became a suspect, because I happened to share the name of the person that everybody assumed participated in the crime. Well, the police, when they did their preliminary investigation, the guy that everybody thought done it, the other Thomas James, had got arrested the day before the crime. So he was in jail when the crime happened. So rather than go back and reinvestigate and really dig now and go back and interview the witness, they just waited 7 months and found another Thomas James and charged me with it. And this is why it's so difficult for you to fight from once you're already there, because everybody assumes that you're guilty. People was actually trying to convince me that I was guilty. I'm serious. Like staff members, they was like trying to convince me or make me accept.
Man, be quiet. You know you did that.
Yeah. Now you want to run to the library. Now you want to keep, you don't want to come to work. You want to keep running the library. You shouldn't have did what you did. And I'm standing stressing the fact that I didn't do it. They gave the person's mother's name. And the name that they gave is the mother and the grandmother of the other Thomas James, not me. It actually eventually came out because after all these years, he finally came forward and told a reporter who reported the story on me in GQ magazine that everybody thought he done it, that they got me for him because he was in jail. To this day, I just want to make your audience aware of the fact that to this day, I still haven't spoken to a homicide detective yet. They charged me with it in the courtroom. And it took me 30 years to undo what was done. So the degree of difficulty for people that's incarcerated is extremely high. For one, you're limited on the amount of time that you can spend in the library. You're limited on the knowledge. We are expected as what they call pro se litigants. I mean, we represent ourselves. We are expected to know what the professionals, the people who went to school for years, we have to learn the law, learn how it applies to us, learn the facts of our case, and prepare a motion all within 2 years.
Oh, and if you don't do it in 2 years, what?
You barred, you practice the chances on you getting your case or a motion heard by the court is almost non-existent from that point.
And that's because it's coming from you and not a lawyer. Is that correct?
Exactly. Because a lot of people don't, and I kind of touch on that in my book, that because it's me filing, the court can deem that I'm abusing the process and I'm causing the squandering of judicial resources. And they can simply put on a piece of paper that I can never file another motion as long as I live pertaining to that particular situation without having an attorney. But if I had the means to afford an attorney, I would have never filed anything. And they know this. So now the only way I can get back in is through an attorney. And they know that the average person is not going to be able to get an attorney. So that's just one less person we got to worry about dealing with.
I didn't ask you this question before, but how many systems were you in your 32 years?
Whew. They, if you're talking about the court system or the laws,
the different gated communities.
Oh, prison institutions.
Yeah.
I was in 32 years. I think I was at maybe 10 different facilities.
And so every time you went to a different facility, you had to start over.
In a lot of areas, yeah, you pretty much had to start over. But far as the legal side of it, is everything pretty much stays the same, status wise. But yeah, you do start over.
Mm.
Yeah.
And did you stay? You stayed in the state of Florida because you were charged in the state of Florida, right? They can't send you outside. Okay. They can't send you out. Go ahead.
They can. It's been times where people, in fact, when I wrote this book, a couple of guys, one guy in fact actually came to me with tears in his eye because he was afraid for me. And he kind of begged and pleaded with me for me not to publish the book while I was incarcerated. Because he said that one or two things was gonna happen. Either the people, and it might seem extreme, but it's true. He said that they was either gonna have the people, meaning the power that people was gonna either have me killed or they was gonna ship me out of the state of Florida. And that's what made me bring that up, is that there are times when you expose certain things. It's like people testify on when officers abuse another inmate and they finally get charged, and like the Valdez situation where they beat this guy to death on death row. He was a death row inmate, and because he was speaking up for other inmates that was being abused, they went in the cell and beat him to death. And his co-defendant was transferred out of the state to Virginia, and he was eventually executed for the things that he was in prison for. And people who testified against the officers, they shipped them out of the state of Florida as well. So it's almost like a deterrent for you to come forth and expose certain things, because most of us already have a problem being able to visit with family members and stuff like this because of the distance, and then they send you out of the state. So visits almost over with from that point. You're in a new area, no one.
You're right. No one, yeah.
Right.
So, amazing. Yeah. So are you able to sue civil suits on the public defender, the police officers? Is that something you're allowed to do, or it has a time lapse on it?
Well, I only been out 30-some days, but what my understanding is at this point is they had this law dubbed the Clean Hands Act, and that law says that if you had been previously convicted of a felony, you don't deserve compensation for being wronged by the state.
What?
Or the county or the city. Yeah, it's called the Clean Hands Act.
And And you had a felony before that?
Yes, ma'am. I had been convicted of a felony prior to that. It had nothing to, obviously it had nothing to do with this crime. Um, but like I said, under that law, it doesn't say that I won't get compensated, but it's not like if I had not had that, if they didn't have this law, I'd have been like automatically pretty much guaranteed that I would get like $50,000 for every year that I sat in prison, which equates to roughly like $1.6 million. And that's an extremely small sum for 32 years of my life.
Exactly. And so this law was passed while you were in prison? So you're not grandfathered out of that? I don't understand that.
That's some of the things that my legal team is actually looking at.
Right.
They
Yeah,
looking
I know
at they
there's a
looking
lot you
into,
can't talk about, but yeah, it
yeah,
seems to me that, you know, they had nothing to do with you because you were incarcerated when they passed that bill. So
yeah,
we'll let the powers that be take care of that.
yeah, yeah.
So let's discuss, if you would, the economic and political corruption in the prison system, particularly in the state of Florida. Can you touch on that just a little bit?
Um,
Just a little
actually, yeah, because I kind of lay that out in my book.
bit.
Um, I do. I touch on that in my book because when the United States and in general and the state of Florida in particular um, became an industrialized nation and state, a lot of farms, factories, they went under, and somebody somebody had a real entrepreneurial mindset and recognized the economic value of prisons. So politically, there was economical encouragement to build prisons because in those
Prison, slavery, all of it is economic.
all that
All of
13th
it.
Amendment still exists, so we can do this. you know, so we can do this. And if you look like when you normally in the state of Florida, when you leaving and you going out of town, you usually pass through some rural areas, and you see a lot of farms, factories where they abandoned pretty much. Machinery done rusted, 10 buildings and shacks, is in shambles because they went out of business. But if you go to the prison, you see all these shiny new vehicles. You see people wearing fresh clothes now. No more just some work jeans. People they're dressing the part. Um, so chances are they buying that locally. So the prison becomes accountable for the vast amount of the income, the influx of money.
It's an economic
You know,
generator for the community.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
It became the launch pad for a lot of things economically. And so now it's like when the housing bubble, they went certain companies and corporations wasn't allowed to go under. Likewise with prisons, they're not going to be allowed to go under. Every time they talk about closing one, is a public outcry. You can't close it. Everybody's going to lose their homes. Businesses going out of business because everybody depends in those areas depends on the prisons to with this constant influx every 2 weeks. You're talking millions of dollars coming in. I think I actually go into the statistics of it in the book. Um, so yeah, it definitely has the political influence comes by way of them the politicians being economically influenced to build more prisons. And the only reason you need to build more prisons because you need to be able to hold the inmate longer. And so to minimize the overcrowding or to prevent it, we need to build more prisons in those same areas. And so when you go to a prison, you see generations working at a prison. The grandfather, the son, the grandson, well, the great grandfather, the father, the son, and the grandson. All of them work at a prison. Mama running food service, two of the sisters working in medical, couple of them correction officers. Uh, so it's a family affair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so have you seen any good things happen or changes, like educational classes, more employment? I know COVID took the prison system to a nosedive.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Um,
so were there any good things that you saw happen in your 32 years, or was it just status quo? And then once COVID happened, everything that could have been considered good was put to bed.
yeah. First, I want to say, when I first came to prison, we was able to get what was called a Pell Grant, which would have allowed us to take college courses, get degrees. And you remember it was a public outcry that they committed a crime and now they're allowed to get free education. Well, when you lose your freedom for whatever reason and you find yourself incarcerated, you paid the ultimate price, because if I spend $100,000 for education, I can make that money back. If I pay with my freedom, my liberty, I can never get that back.
Right.
So it wasn't free. And I used to encourage dudes in classes that I facilitate, don't ever think that the soap is free, the toothpaste is free, because none of that stuff is free, because you pay with your liberty. Um, the only thing that I can say that I would say is that I seen good come prison our way, as far as people that was incarcerated, is, I'm gonna say, private prisons like South Bay, Graceville, North Bay. Those prisons is loaded with vocational trades, self betterment courses. In fact, they will, if you come up with a curriculum that's seems like it'll make a difference, or it can be considered a game changer, they will actually have a meeting, and if you can create the proper presentation, they'll find a way to implement that into the system at the private prisons. Department of Corrections, um, the regular state prisons, once you get past, if they allow you to get a GED at that facility, once you get past the GED, that's it.
That's it.
They don't, that's it. There's really no other self betterment courses. Um, None of this type of stuff. Everything is anger management, alcohol anonymous, narcotic anonymous, stuff like that. But there's really not very many classes and courses that works with your mindset, like direct one, two, three, uh, analyze your emotions, criminal rationalization, things like this, because this is, even though if you teach a person, because I was in prison when they had trade, when they was giving out, you was able to get trades, but it's just my opinion based on what I've seen and talking to guys who who generates the statistics of recidivism. Um, they tell me, and I'm like, you took these trades and you did this, what happened? The thing was, you taught me a trade and I learned a trade, but you didn't tell me how to deal with adversity. You didn't tell me how to deal with certain things, how to make the certain adjustments, how to expect um, that that things not gonna always go your way, stuff like this here. And this is what criminal rationalization, all these different things, they act as a mirror, because other than that, everybody looks out of a window. And you can always find every person that's incarcerated, every person that's walked the face of this earth can find something, someone else they can look at and say, this is the reason I'm not a success. This is the reason I can't do this, because you're looking out of a window. But these classes that I just named, they act as a mirror, and you have nobody there but you. There's nobody to point at but you. Because what it does is it shows you about how we rationalize doing something. Oh, I couldn't get a job, that's why I was robbing people. Or if they wouldn't have fired me, I wouldn't have done this. You rationalizing it. And we when you're in prison or when you're in people in society, period, we don't think in those terms. This is not something that's taught to us, and it doesn't come natural and normal. So it has to get pointed out to you, and it has to be fed to you in a way where you be receptive of it. And then you can start applying it and using it to analyze yourself. And then when you go near trying to rationalize something you're about to do wrong, you can stop yourself and nip it in the bud. Vocational trades ain't gonna teach you that.
Right. Yeah. Because you have to have more, especially if you have been incarcerated for some time. I have a friend who, came home not too long ago, and he did not even recognize his neighborhood because it's not the neighborhood you left 5 years ago, just 5 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So, that corner that you left, the cleaners and the corner stores, now Walmart, right? That's all gone, right? The neighborhood that you lived in is now gentrified. You don't know anybody on the street, right?
Right.
And so, and that kind of non-comfort can be debilitating.
Right.
When you come back home, right? Because there's no comfort. There's no blanket to pull over you and say, hey, I'm back. This feels good. No, it doesn't feel good because you don't know anybody. It doesn't even look like the same place you left, right? So that's and they have to be and inmates have to be residents have to be ready for that. That even 2 years, 3, let alone 32 years. I don't even want to talk about what that looks like, right? But even 2 years makes a real difference about how your world changes when you're inside a gated community. Yeah.
Yeah, it's it's difficult. I mean, and I can say it because I'm living it right now. Nothing. I mean, almost nothing is the same as it was when I left the streets of Dade County 32 years ago.
Oh no.
Yeah. The normally for most people it becomes like a cultural shock and things like. But I try to always be prepared. I always ask questions about changes. I paid attention to things, the graduation and changing. Every person that I encountered in prison, no matter regardless what neighborhood they was coming from, whether it was it didn't matter what city or county they was out of, I was asking what was going on in the area. So what y'all doing now and what's this? Because it would prepare me to some degree for what I knew, what I felt was inevitable, that I would one day be out here again, because I wasn't gonna stop fighting. Nothing short of death would keep me from coming back out.
How do you keep that kind of spirit? I mean, that is amazing. What did you pull upon? What did you pull upon, Jay? That's amazing.
For one, I knew that I couldn't afford to fall weak, because if I did, any group, any set of people can only be strong as the weakest link.
That's right.
So if I fall apart, then what happens to all the people, the people who believed in me, the people who wanted the best for me, people who wanted to see me liberated, wanted to see me prove my innocence. If I somehow succumb to my situation, I was letting a lot of people down, and namely myself. A lot of people is amazed by the fact that I'm not bitter. They amazed by the fact that I'm not angry. And at first, I didn't understand why everybody felt I should be like upset and angry. I mean, most people are, and a psychiatrist just told me the other day that everybody that she ever dealt with that was wrongly convicted is extremely angry people. And she said, but you don't seem angry. And I told her I'm not. I say, Um, Anger is just like any other emotion,
Mm.
but people seem to want to separate anger from all the other emotions. You know, they want to ostracize anger, and don't nobody say manage any other emotion, but everybody wants you to manage your anger.
When it's a
And
true emotion, and you should be able to get it out.
right,
Yeah.
right, and rightly so. I mean,
Right.
I deserve, anybody deserves when you've been wronged. Don't nobody say that a victim of a crime shouldn't be angry when they come in the courtroom and scream at somebody or the defendant, and they scream or they say because the defendant got found guilty or because he got found not guilty, they scream at him. They let their anger flow. And nobody has have a problem with that, but they feel like, oh, you've been to prison and you should be basically you should just be glad they even letting you out.
Mm.
You know, um, but for me, it's not that there's not anger, but I deal with anger in a different way. I don't let anger control me and have me acting out and do it. I let that emotion is what drives and motivates and inspire me to be better, to do better, to work harder. And it's like if you got a fireplace and you wouldn't take all your wood and throw it in that fire because the fire is gonna rage out of control.
Right.
You're gonna manage that fire. You're gonna just keep putting wood in the fire just to keep the fire burning. And that's what I do. I take that and I use that and I just feed off of that emotion. I put my little wood in the fire and I keep that fire going. And that's what drove me all them years. That's what wouldn't let me stop fighting. That's what wouldn't let me give up. That's what kept me believing in not so much even in the system doing what's right, but in my ability to get the system to do what's right.
Yes. Not that you had to
Because
do it right, but to
right,
make the system right.
right.
I get it.
Because if the system was gonna do right, I would have never been in prison.
Right.
I would have never even been charged with a crime that I didn't commit. So that's the
In
thing that pushed me. And I
in that
knew so,
in the era that you were put in prison in the gated community, that was not a very good era for any Black or brown babies, particularly in Miami-Dade,
yeah,
right? I mean,
yeah, it was,
you were being locked up for walking while brown.
yeah,
Yeah, it was
yeah,
pretty
it
off.
was,
Yeah.
yeah.
And in the 80s, of course, you talked briefly about the crack epidemic. Let's talk about, because you were incarcerated at that time, right?
Huh?
You were incarcerated when the crack epidemic went full force, or were you?
Yeah, when it was, I was out when it, in the mid '80s when it first hit. Um, but when it by 1990, yeah, and I left the streets in '90, and I was hearing and seeing, yeah, it was full fledged then.
And it got overcrowded, and
Right.
it was yeah. Let's not talk about
Yeah,
that. So
yeah.
let's talk about what is the mousetrap. Can you tell me what that is? Oh, you're not. You
Okay.
don't have to. I just
No, no,
thought.
no, 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 no. What happens is I use when I say mousetrap, I use the mousetrap as a like a metaphor. Um, because the mousetrap is an irreducible complexity. And I associate that or with the criminal justice, what I call the criminal injustice system. Um, if you have a mousetrap is made up of maybe approximately like 5 parts. And if one of those parts is not working, then you have a dysfunctional mousetrap. You have a broken mousetrap. Well, it's a little different when it comes to the justice system. When the justice system malfunctions, or one of those many parts, because it's made up of many, many parts. We know that. That's any and everybody that participates or play an active role in the criminal justice system at any point, whether you're a juror, whether you're a lawyer, police, whatever, even victim witnesses, judges, prosecutors, all those people, all these people make up the system. Secretaries, all that. So if one of those parts is not functioning as intended, you don't have a broken criminal justice system. It automatically inverts and become an injustice system because somebody is going to get unfairly convicted, unfairly arrested, unfairly charged, probably unfairly put to death.
It can be as simple as the secretary not getting the judge or the PA not getting the judge a piece of paper.
Exactly. And it can cost somebody else the next 4 or 5 years of their life.
Right.
Now, so we need to be more attentive to the criminal justice apparatus. Because we so easy to say, oh, well, let them handle that. That's their thing. But no, that's our thing and I can say our thing because I'm in society too. And somebody needs to question certain things. Only when you was growing up, your parents told you don't question me and don't question God.
Right.
Okay, and I respect that. But I can question the justice system. And the rest of my life, I would spend it questioning and challenging the system because there's so many people that's incarcerated that need help. And I say we because I was in there crying out up until 30 some days ago, and nobody seems to hear it. I was marshaling facts. I was trying to tell people. I would tell anybody that listen. I was at an institution. They had deaf people that couldn't even hear me, and I still was trying to tell them. I'm serious. I was telling them.
You were learning sign language.
I hope they read my lips or something because I don't know. I wouldn't leave no stone unturned. And the reason I was doing this because I was looking for the needle in the haystack.
Absolutely.
So what I decided to do was create a magnet that was so big and so strong, I wouldn't have to look for the needle in the haystack. If I wave it in front of the haystack, the needle will come to me. And that was when I started trying to get the media, because that's how I was going to create the magnet. And eventually it happened. So that's what I mean when I talk about the mousetrap and the way the system is malfunctioning, and it's costing people, countless people, many, many years of their life, or even because a lot of people perish in prison. I seen guys ask for begging for an aspirin because some people have to take aspirin for their heart, and the officer was on the phone chewing bubble gum and kept waving him off, and the guy actually ended up like 40 minutes later dropping dead in front of the officer station. It's horrific. It's horrific.
I understand that they won't give counts of the bodies that they pulled out during COVID. They don't have that number for some reason. Yeah.
And that makes it obvious.
Yeah.
The reason they
we don't know. What do you mean you don't know? Yeah.
How can you have accountability? See, that's the thing. No, people are not being held accountable.
No.
We need accountability for everybody who, I don't know if everybody realizes it, but any and everybody who is allowed to partake or play an active role in the Florida criminal injustice system has to take an oath.
Right.
Everybody.
Right.
Even when everybody except the person who's being accused.
Right.
Or the person who's being convicted. Everybody else has to take an oath. And nobody is holding these people accountable to that oath. Because if I was a witness, I had to get on the stand, raise my hand, and tell the whole truth. Number. That's an oath. everybody who participates in the Florida criminal justice system has to take an oath. And we're not holding these people accountable to that oath.
So now that you're out, what's the one advocacy that you really want to help people be a part of, to help the people in the gated communities? What is the one thing? I just heard that now they're not allowing paper, so you can't really get a real letter that it comes. I don't understand all that. Now there's so many things that can't be done now, but what most people don't understand that a letter from home is everything.
Yeah, they had got, they put a minimum on how many pictures we can have. Okay, I was locked up 32 years, and they said that I can only have 50 pictures. So that means there's some family members and friends that I can't even keep a simple photograph of because it exceeds the limit, the number of pictures I'm allowed to have. This new thing, I hadn't experienced it. It had made it to the institution that I was released from, which was South Florida Reception Center. I was being held there for the last 6 months while the state was reinvestigating my case. But they got this thing they came out with. Well, if you get letters, cards, pictures sent to you, it has to go to this center. This has to go to this center. They're gonna make a copy of it and then forward it to you at the facility. But it's still coming on paper. But you just can't get your. That's a waste of money. That's a squandering of resources right there. But I can't get a roll of toilet paper because you don't have toilet paper. But you can spend money to pay somebody to copy letters and forward it to me at a facility. That means somebody gonna have to pay for the postage. Because my post, when I mailed the letter off, it had to go to this facility.
It already had postage, right?
Right. And now somebody else had to pay for this postage for them to get it at the facility they at. So it makes no sense, but you just created some jobs, which means that's some more people that's gonna require prisons to stay in existence.
So just give me one thing that you wish there was more advocacy of for the people in gated communities, or two that most people don't even think about.
The two, I'm gonna say the two most important things would be for people to get better education opportunities, and that'll be the second thing. The first thing would be we were in prison. One of the things that's really needed is people who really know law, because that right there, it will serve to reduce the prison population, but they don't seem to want to provide that service. Most states have people that actually qualified and certified to do law, but those are the two most important things. And I'm actually in the process of trying to establish organization or foundation to do just what I'm saying. So I'm looking for attorneys, paralegals, investigators, for people who sincere about giving everybody that, or giving people who deserve it their day in court.
Jay, how many people do you in the sphere that you were in are incarcerated unjustly and could be brought out to society if the DNA was looked at? Because if it was 70s, 80s, 60s, the DNA wasn't really around.
Right. And, you know, the sad thing, I knew a guy who had been locked up since like 1974. And when I attempted to assist him, we wrote the state in the courts trying to get his documents, and they sent back a form saying they had destroyed everything. So now there's no way for him to even have a shot at being able to get his situation back in front of a judge. He have no documentation. So when if he files something and he's making a claim or allegation, the state gonna say we don't have no documents, and the court gonna tell him produce the documents, or I'm gonna have to dismiss the motion, knowing that he don't have the documentation because you destroyed it.
I lost you, Jay. I lost you. I can't hear you. I don't know. Call for help. I can't hear you. You must have, did you hit something? Say something now. Nope. Do you see anything on your screen? Okay, hold on. Oh, we were just talking, well, I don't remember what we were talking about. Let's talk about,
Oh, I know what it was.
okay, go ahead.
I was telling you that how they making us, if your case is not active, meaning if you don't have something pending in the court, they want you to send your legal documents out of the facility. So normally it's gonna be a big box. Now here's the problem. When you send this out, you can't get that big box sent back in unless an attorney sends it to you. Other than that, you can only get 15 sheets of paper at a time per envelope. But this happened to a couple of guys. They sent their stuff out, and you know, the family member passed away, decided he didn't need it, so they threw it away. The house burnt up, and now this person is sitting in prison and can't even fight. And you know, all this new stuff was coming out, DNA, this, that, and they didn't have nothing to work with. So yeah.
I didn't know there was a statute of limitations on how long you keep documentation. Shouldn't it be put on microfiche or something?
But you know, back in those days, I don't think they didn't have it.
They had
And
microfiche.
so, yeah, but I'm saying they wasn't doing it. Everything was on paper, and that was it. You know, if you lost your documents or whatever, you had to. Because even with me, what I did to keep them from throwing my stuff away, I would save when my family and friends send me money. I would save money just so I can go back to the state attorney and buy my state attorney files all over again. Because that'll make them have to keep pulling it up, and you know, by them having to keep retrieving it, then they was less likely to throw something away because the case has been active on their files. There was some activity with it, and that's what I did.
So let's talk briefly about how incarcerated individuals in our gated communities affect the family.
Oh,
right. So not your family in particular, but let's talk about the young lady who has maybe 2 children. She's working for, you know, minimum wage. She has 2 kids. Her significant other, her husband, is incarcerated. And she has to manage all that, send money to put on the book, manage to travel to see, you know, her man or her woman, his woman, try to keep a connection with the father or the mother. Tell me how you saw that interaction while you were in prison.
And you know that on the family structure, that's horrific. That's a travesty in itself. Relationships get destroyed like that. You know, even in society, most relationships that end, it ends with something financial. You know, so you can imagine a man or a woman is incarcerated, and it's devastating to the family, in particular the kids. And I'm me myself. People ask me, you know, like, you don't have no kids, and I'm like, I'm glad, and they look at me like, what? I said, I'm glad I ain't have no kids, because that's 32 years I wouldn't have been in their life, you know, playing a significant role in their life or a part, and that's a travesty in itself. You have to think in terms of the new criminals, the new people who are being, who committing crimes, the new people who are committing suicide, you know, the young people, because they're missing a parent. And you can just imagine what's being said, because when you think about when you was a child, your mama, your dad is a jailbird, and sometimes both of the parents is incarcerated, and everything falls on the grandmother or the auntie. And this child is left to suffer on every front.
Every level.
In school, yeah, in school, then you have to hear that. You have to hear the family members talk bad about your parent. You know, it's devastating on the child. And it has to have a psychological effect on that child going into adulthood, because not very many people know how to sit down and have a real discussion with a child and explain things in a way where they can understand, because no matter how you talk to them or what you tell them, when they go to school, the peers are antagonizing them. You go to a PTA meeting, both parents there. Where's your mother? Where's your dad? My daddy in jail. My mother in jail. Or, you know, the grandmother has to go everywhere. Daddy ain't at the football game, the soccer games, cheerleader practice. You know, so he's not. No matter what they choose to indulge in, he or she is unable to play an active role in just the support, just supporting them, that child, helping them with homework, you know, having somebody they can talk to when they have a problem. You know, the absence of the father. And I actually used the movie Boys in the Hood in some of the classes, showing how in that movie, Trey had both his parents, even though they were separated. His mama raised him to a point, then she brought him to his dad and say, I did everything I do for him, but I can't teach him to be a man. That's your job. And he started living with his father. And the little time that they spent together when his father cutting his hair, but he's talking to him. There's dialogue going on. When they go to the little beachfront and they're fishing, that's male bonding time. So when his friend got killed, who only had his mother, and they went for revenge, everything that his father was telling him played back in his mind.
Yes.
And he was able to get out that car
yes.
before he ruined his life.
Yes.
You remember that part?
Oh, yeah.
And nobody seems to catch that in that movie.
Oh, yeah.
And I did actually use that in classes to show dudes this is the way you look at a movie, because if you look at it for the excitement instead of something educational, you're going to miss the real point. And what it's showing is the importance of the parents in the child's life. It can make the difference. Will that person be successful? Will that person live a long life? Stuff like this. So it's definitely we need to find a way to even though you got people that's in prison, and I mean, if they committed a crime, okay, rightly so they there. But I met a guy his name was Michael Johnson. He had a life sentence for stealing a pack of cookies out of like you told him a Circle K, all because he was habitualized for a pack of cookies where he had been on a crack binge for like 3-4 days, and he walked in the store and just opened a pack of cookies and walked out eating them, and they gave him a life sentence. He did get out eventually, but he did some time before he was able to get out. That parent doesn't deserve that. That child doesn't deserve that. Society doesn't deserve that for this person to be incarcerated that long for that.
Because it costs a lot of money to have an individual incarcerated. I mean, it's not like, okay, so, it's $2 a day. No. And if they're there for life, you got medical, you got dental, you got, everything that it takes to take care of a human being, you have to do.
Yeah.
And that's money that comes from us.
Exactly. I talk about that in depth in the book.
Do you? Okay.
I really do. I talk about that in depth. Yeah. And I do the whole breakdown for that. I keep saying things about the book, but it's because I know that anybody, when the book is officially online, anybody that reads it, only thing I can guarantee you, you will not be disappointed. And
I didn't look at your website all completely, but if you could get a buy form on there, right? So once it's done, you'd have people who have already paid for the book, and all you have to do is ship it.
Right, like pre-order, like a pre-order.
Yes, a pre-order form.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you could get somebody to do that for you, or we can talk offline and maybe we can get that to happen. But it would be nice if you, didn't have to go straight to Amazon. So some of those funds could come a different way.
Yeah.
So I have my own personal feeling about children visiting gated communities. I do understand why that has to happen. I just wish it could happen differently. I wish there was an area for children and their fathers, right? Or children and their mothers. And not to bring them into that system in the way adult comes in.
Right.
And everybody comes in the same way, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's pretty devastating.
Yeah.
So, how difficult was it for you to write your book while you were in that gated community and keep it? I mean, that's the thing.
No, honestly, it was extremely difficult. Because like
Jay, fix your earpiece because it's okay. Try it again.
me.
Okay, go ahead.
Apparently, I just said something that triggered something on
Okay, it's no problem. Yeah.
Yeah. The book, it was, like I said, it was extremely difficult.
Yeah, I asked you, how did you keep it,
Yeah.
as you're going from place to place and you're writing and
Yeah, what happened was I actually, I lost the book a couple of times. In one situation, it was a mass shakedown, and I think the officers realized what it was during the shakedown. And when they left, my book left with them. So, the guys in the dorm was upset that I had lost my book, because I used to read excerpts from the book to the dorm to see how they feel about it. And they were that, most of them really wanted me to push the book or hurry up and finish writing it so it can get out. Because it was a representation of all that they think and feel but won't say, for fear of the parole commission or some form of retaliation. I didn't have that problem. I developed this thing where I say that the best book in the world has never been written. It was always rewritten, because nobody writes the book on the first time out. So you just keep writing it. It's like a draft. So I'm like,
Right.
okay, I just got to write another draft.
Right.
And that's what I did with the book. So I end up having to like break it down. I write some, I mail it home, I do different things. I get copies. So if something happened, I still had a copy at home, and I just have them send those pages back so I can write again, stuff like that. It shouldn't be, and then, because the staff in prisons, they don't really like for you to do things that would be deemed positive. I'm being serious. Most of them don't like that. I actually was invited into a conversation that staff was having, because they were asking me a question, and the question was, isn't it true that at one point y'all was allowed to get degrees while y'all was incarcerated? And I told the female officer, I said, yeah, but they stopped that. And the male officer said, I'm glad they stopped it. She was like, why you glad they stopped that? At least if they get their education, then when they get out, they ain't got to do nothing wrong to come back. They can get a good job, whatever. And he said, man, I only been here 2.5 years. I plan on doing my whole 25. I need them to come back. And that's really the mindset that most people have.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. So if this is an officer who only been in the system 2 years and he thinks like this, imagine people who've been for a while.
I just need my
that's
25
the
years,
mentality
and I
that
don't care
exists.
about anybody else.
Right. I need you to keep coming back to prison so I can keep a job. So that's people who say they're against crime actually support crime and don't realize it. They really don't.
If there was one course that a Black or brown man should take in law, what would it be?
Constitutional law.
Constitutional law.
Constitutional law. Constitutional law. Because the Constitution is really a super powerful tool if you read the Constitution, because it's a weapon that you can use, and it's also it's a weapon that allows you to be on the offensive, but it's also a weapon that allows you to be defensive. Because I know my rights, so I know I can do this. Offensive. And then I know my rights, so you can't do that to me. So I think constitutional law would be the thing that I feel every person in prison should learn.
I mean, outside of the prison.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
Every person should learn the Constitution.
Constitutional law. All right, so is there anything else you need or would like to tell us? Because we're getting on to 9, 10, and I don't want to keep.
Okay, well, I mean, other than the fact that, I'm supposed to be having on my website, www.justice4jay.info. I'm supposed to be having a online petition, getting attached to that, where I'm hoping that people will sign it, because it's for me to be compensated. I sat in prison 32 years for a crime that I didn't commit. The state admitted it in court. In certain, I think it's the day that I got released, which was April 27th. It was recorded in the courtroom when the state, the revelation had wrongly convicted that court did actually convict. So
Fix your earpiece.
doing those,
Try it again. Okay, go ahead. Go
you
ahead.
can hear,
Go ahead.
this, that, like I say, that is actually people saying it. So in the
This meeting is being recorded.
So on your website, you're going to have a petition that says what?
The petition is explaining the situation. In the end, is asking for, because it's explaining the Clean Hands Act, the thing that's precluded me from automatically qualifying for the 50,000 a year that I was wrongly convicted. And that's what it's asking for, people to sign it, for the people to sign it, asking the legislation to approve a bill that would allow me to get compensated. Because anybody who has a previous conviction it's like a bill has to be sponsored and they have to approve it, and then you can get the compensation, versus people who didn't have a prior felony automatically qualifies for the compensation.
Even though one
So
thing didn't have anything to do with the other.
yeah, they're mutually exclusive, but yeah, exactly.
That's crazy.
It's I mean, it's a way to not be you know, and to
It's a
be
way
honest
not,
with you,
it's a way not to give people money that they've taken their lives.
basically, the state of Florida is really like the only entity, the only people that can make someone a victim and not be held responsible or accountable.
Mm.
Anybody else, there's some type of price to pay.
I want to put your website in the chat for everybody. So it's www.justice.
Justice, the number 4, JAY.info.
Okay, great. Everybody has that now.
Yeah, and because I was let out of prison after 32 years with absolutely nothing, my family actually initiated a GoFundMe page for me. So, and that's also on the website.
Okay.
The link that you click on, and it take you to that petition for the GoFundMe. I don't really like asking people. I mean, I need it, but I never feel comfortable directing people to the GoFundMe.
Okay, well, listen, I'll direct people to the GoFundMe.
Yeah.
Please go to the
Okay.
GoFundMe, www.justiceforj.info, and give what you can, $5, $10, $50. It all counts. It's like a penny.
Yeah.
You know, if you get 10, it's 10 cents. So everything counts. Please, you can either reach deep or you can reach shallow, but take a moment and go fund. Help Jay start his life all over again outside of the gated community. You know, you answered all my questions. I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you for having me on here.
Listen, we're going to do it again. Now that we know that all the cosmetics here, we're going to do the interview again once your book hits Amazon, and you can pre-order off of your website. So we're probably in the next 30 days, right? We'll get that done, and we'll be able to read some excerpts from it. And maybe you'll feel more comfortable answering some more in-depth questions. I mean, you know, I understand. Listen, you've been out 32 days. You're not trying to do anything that's gonna mess up what's going on. And so I can appreciate that. And thank you, Jay. So I will get in touch with you tomorrow so we can see about that book thing. like cover thing,
Okay.
and see if we can make that happen. And
Okay.
thank you everyone for being here. What I can say is that we have no idea what it's like to spend a day, let alone 32 years of your life, in a gated community for a crime that you did not commit. This young man was able to do that time and come out and share his knowledge, because that's what you get, knowledge of how to be institutionalized and come out on the other side and be not whole, but at least a part of community again. Thank you, Jay. I can't even imagine what your life was like. I just am excited about the new life, the next
Right.
phase, right, of your life. And I just want to give the audience a quick statement here. If you compare each American state with every other nation on earth, let me say that again, on earth, Florida's incarceration rate on its own ranks higher than every nation on the planet. Let me say that again. Florida's incarceration rate on its own ranks higher than every nation on the planet. In fact, 31 American states have rates higher than any individual country. Oklahoma, Louisiana, Mississippi, Georgia, and Alabama are in the top 5. So let's think twice before we shake our heads at people in gated communities, because a lot of them should not be there in the first place. So thank you, everybody. And Jay, we'll talk tomorrow. Thank you. Good night.
Definitely.
Good night.
Good night.